Welcome to How Women Inspire today. I am so excited for you to meet Jessica Nall. She is the most senior woman in her practice. She's a seasoned lawyer. She specializes in defending technology innovators against government enforcement and litigation, for example. With over 2 decades of experience, Jess has expertly navigated the complex intersection of government regulations and cutting edge technology. You must be the most in demand woman in Silicon Valley, I have to say, including AI, cybersecurity, semiconductors, and digital currencies, like everything, including the hottest stuff of today. I can only imagine the stories you've got. You probably can't say most of them, but someday, when you write your memoirs, you're currently a partner at the global law firm Baker McKenzie, and Jess leads international teams advising and defending some of the world's foremost tech companies as they venture into emerging technologies. The companies that we're seeing and hopefully someday are going to be big enough that they'll need you to defend them. So I'm so excited that you're here today as we delve into your insights in the legal landscape for tech innovators. Everybody, I know you're on the edge of your seats because this is the critical stuff that makes or breaks companies and the companies that we all work in and are all investing in or on the boards of. So thank you so much for giving of your time and your commitment here today, Jess. I'm so excited people get to hear from you.
Oh, I am so honored to be here. Oh my goodness, you are one of my role models, and you have done so much already to help level that playing field that I've been fighting in for 23 years. I've already seen huge improvements in my own career and those of a lot of women around me just by the inspiration that you've given us all. So thank you so much.
Well, you're very sweet. But listen, if my work was done, 50% of the CEOs you work with would be women. And so we still got some work to do.
We
But
do.
we're on the path. And I know with you backing people up, they're getting great advice and going to be able to block and tackle for sure. But before we get into all of that, can we have a little bit of fun? I'd love to hear, what is your theme song or the song you listen to on the good days or the tough days?
Sure. I really love the song Genesis from the group Justice, which is an instrumental, but it's got a great beat and it just makes me dance. Even if it's a hard day or a great day, it just brings my whole attitude up. So I love it.
Jess, I don't know if you know this, but my daughter's a violinist and her husband's a pianist, and they do concerts and performances all over the world. She also works at Uber, a tech company. But to me, what you just said is so powerful. Music heals the cracks in my soul. It uplifts, and this is why I always like to ask this question. And you're going to be on our playlist, so with this song. So for everybody listening, if you haven't found us on Spotify, you got to find the How Women Inspire playlist, and we will soon have a new edition. So you went to law school. When did you decide tech innovation and working in this side of the legal field? Was that from day one? Like how did this come about?
Definitely from day one. I've
Okay.
been a tech evangelist since I was a kid. I was 6 years old when we got our first family PC, and not to date myself, but that was in the 80s, so quite a long time ago. And hearing that sort of beep sound, and then all of a sudden being able to talk to people around the world on this family computer in the living room was just mind-blowing to me. It felt like magic. And so I've been in it since the beginning. And in San Francisco, right, we've seen all these waves, tech and internet and the dot-com and all of that. So I've always just been really fascinated by that, and at the same time raised to really question authority and wonder, what is law? What should law be? And so the intersection between this tech innovation and the waves of change that has brought, and then seeing the government want to try to slow it down or stop it, or make, deterrence out of, take individuals and hold them to account for perceived wrongs. I have been thrilled to be a part of that, part of history, the
Yeah.
development of that.
Awesome. And like defending the rights of people to innovate and to create. I mean, I would think right now, like AI is in the news about different legal cases. It feels like, was on the regular. And a lot of our board members, all the community, public company, private company board members are all wanting to make sure that they can be good governors and make sure they're asking the right questions to protect companies right now, of course. Do you have words of advice for those folks? Because it's changing so quickly. And often, we're more like 54% of corporate public company board members now are active operators, which I think is such a good thing. It used to almost always be retired people, but the environment's moving too fast. You can't possibly add enough value if you retired and you're not keeping up with the tech, right?
Sure, absolutely. Yes. I love that about AI. I think we're not there yet, but soon we're going to have hopefully engagement at every level of society because it's the internet. It's the
Yeah.
new thing
Yeah.
that's here to stay. So, yeah, for the board members, I'd say, you can't do it all. You can't know it all. We still are at an early stage with this tech and the various harms that can flow from it and the use cases for it. So, trying to do their best and doing something is way better than doing nothing and
Like
trying.
legally protective, right? As a governor,
Yeah.
like if you asked enough, even if you didn't ask, you don't know what you're doing. If you ask enough questions and you show up prepared, like it protects you.
Absolutely, that's right. Sitting back and just and being too concerned about not what you don't know, that's not the best way to approach it. To just dive in with all, two hands and get and start grappling with it.
Okay, well, all the media and the way the media is behaving these days, which I'm just going to say, my opinion is we need a cleanup. Everywhere you look, it's like AI is going to take over every single job. It is going to make it's killing everything. Not true, of course. I would say almost every company that is pitching us for investment, seed stage companies have significant AI embedded. They're not the creators of AI. They're not but they're using it as part of the critical technology. So with all that swirling and the messiness out there, so you sound like you're like the champion that makes sure people don't get squashed. So isn't it a good thing though to regulate some emerging technologies like AI? I mean, there's some risk, isn't there?
Yeah, of course there is, right? This is just like another tool, like the internet, like I said, but also like a light bulb or a telephone. Yes, bad actors can use it to do bad things, and we want to try to prevent that. The question is, how can we do
Right.
that, and who should be given the burden of doing that? And I fear that, there's some amount of FOMO, fear of missing
Yeah.
out on behalf of the government and politicians in passing these laws every day and left
Well,
in
they sound super ignorant every time I hear them talk. They don't
it's
sound like they know what they're doing. That's for
it's
sure.
it's a problem, and what it's, I think, going to evolve to, if we can't sort of stop it, is privileging the incumbents, the big companies. It's already hard enough, in the startup ecosystem to make it out there for women and diverse people and diverse ideas. We want, as a society, we're gonna benefit from more innovation, more
Right.
ideas in the marketplace. If you raise the cost of compliance so high that nobody's able to meet that, then you're gonna end up with really poor outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and fair use, that's another example where obviously content creators are very concerned, rightfully so, about losing control of their works, but fair use is a recognized legal doctrine for centuries that says
Yeah,
we
it's
can.
not brand new, and this is not a new conversation. When the radio came out, people were worried about it, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah,
So, yeah, it's a question of where are we gonna use that, the might of the government, that massive power, where should that really be employed?
that's
And
a huge hammer.
yeah.
Well, and I've been running stuff for 100 years, and at a certain point, I came to the point where I was like, listen, my HR policies, for example, need to support the high performers. And if you are not performing well, that's the management of management needs to jump in and correct for the poor performers, not squash the high performers. Is that what you're talking about? That kind of thing? Like, listen, somehow we got to get in there and make sure that we manage for the dangerous stuff and can have a hammer the right size when it's necessary, but not squash the high performers that are doing it for the right reasons.
That's exactly right, and all the new ideas coming into the marketplace, those need a chance to flourish and grow, and what we really need to be going after are the bad actors, figuring out ways to keep the criminals from using these tools, not treating the makers of the tools as potential criminals.
That's so wise. But the fear mongering's real. So you're the legal defenders, but are you also in the business of talking to people about how are we managing this societal fear and that's come out the not right sized, the outsized fear around it?
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, I'm a big tech evangelist, so I'm like, well, the solution is more tech.
Yeah.
I know it's too easy to say, but there are some tools that are being developed now that will help, like, detect deep fakes and help
Okay.
prevent fraud and help screen for those bad outcomes and give consumers, I mean, the money drives everything, right? So give people the visibility they need to know which products they want to support, which companies they want to support, and which ones they don't. That's really, I think, going to go a lot further than
Yeah.
using the might of the government and sending the enforcement lawyers in to mess with me and my clients.
Yeah. So do you see any, I mean, certainly, I mean, I think you've kind of covered this, but tech can be used in dangerous ways. And AI, appears there is a lot of fear and some of it, I certainly have had conversations where I'm like garbage in, garbage out. What are some of the biggest AI companies doing to make sure that we create responsible and safe AI? And is there any welcome regulation at all in this space?
Sure. Yeah. Their companies are working hard, obviously, to try to, there are like inherent prompts and a lot of the tools that will make it very difficult or impossible for somebody to use it. For example, tell me how to make a bomb. That usually will get rejected. But just as hackers are always one step ahead of cybersecurity, there's ways to jailbreak that and get around that. So companies are trying their best. I just, I'm concerned that if the regulation is applied too heavily,
Yeah.
that's going to be an impossible task to meet, and it's going to also dumb down the tools to some degree because you will hit a barrier and you can't see it, you don't know why, and it won't let you do what you should be allowed to do, not a
Yeah.
problematic use of it. So yeah, I think obviously the regulations around privacy, those are good, right? We want to make sure that companies are not going to steal our personal data and use it. It is a little bit concerning that, we've gotten to a point in this society where everything we do, buy, everywhere we go, everything, all the music we listen to is all being kept somewhere in a giant database and used to try to sell us more products. And some of that is we welcome that and allow that,
I
but
was gonna
some
say my kids
yeah.
love it. They're like, "Why would I want to be seeing stuff that's not right size for me? I'd rather see stuff that's been filtered and created for me." So that's the problem. There's pros and cons. There's people that like it and people who don't. Some people like to have, okay, I'm just gonna admit my Zoom filter's on. Like, I like that. And I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, "Oh, I didn't have this many wrinkles on the Zoom filter with the Zoom filter." I think that we all have different opinions. And so is the tech industry, like there are groups of people getting together and with help from law firms like you saying, hey, listen, let's self-regulate in certain ways. Let's give, warning, or you can pick or in or opt in or out. Like, what are the things that you are seeing are the self-regulating things that can help us avoid ending up going up to the hammer that's not good for anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-regulation is on top of mind, I think, in the tech world for obvious reasons, because if we can do it before the government comes to do it, then we can do it better. But you're right. I mean, it all comes down to consent. If you're okay with it, with wanting, the song selection being suggested, like you like this song by Justice, how about these other 5 songs by similar artists? Like, sure, that's great. I opt into that. But I remember when I was pregnant with my second, and it wasn't my current firm, but I didn't want my firm to know. I was being very silent. It was
Sure.
comp time or something. And all of a sudden I got all these advertisements for like baby stuff everywhere. Like, oh, they must have read my
Like the
email.
16-year-old who went to the clinic and gets yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it felt a little bit invasive. So I feel like consumers do need to have some control over that and some visibility, most important to that. So I think that
Yeah.
providing that visibility and that ability to consent or not consent, that's really where the self-regulation can be really helpful.
I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not asking for a seat at the table. My friends, this is the first generation of us. We have a huge opportunity. We have power and influence and wealth. And we can start building the tables where we get the prime seats. Today, we want to invite you to join us as investors in venture. I know no one's asked you to do it before. It might be something that seems scary or foreign, but I promise you it's not that different than investing in a mutual fund where your retirement funds are. I want you to lean in and just learn a little bit more. How about making the commitment that in the next 12 months, you can give yourself 12 months to figure it out and to take a step? I want to invite you to be part of the new table of power and influence and wealth. You're invited. I want to sit at the table with you because we're going to make big change We're going to make the world we've been dreaming of. So opting in consumer control, sort of tech companies, you know, being disciplined, boards being, doing a good job of making sure there's some good self-regulation. What are the other things that we should all be? I just think in general, we all need to be better consumers of media. I used to watch a whole bunch of news channels and I can't do it anymore. That music that's like, da, 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 like, the price of eggs is going up. People are eating dogs. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this has gotten nutty, right? So what are the things what is the company's responsibility? What's the government's responsibility? What's the consumer's responsibility? I think it feels like there's, maybe there's more than that.
No, it is a complex ecosystem. So yeah, I would say for companies and their boards, what I always say, which is to give yourself a thought experiment, a nightmare, right? Sit there and think about what's the absolute worst PR cycle that you could have, because that's going to hit your pocketbook hard. And then work backward from there. What can you do now to try to prevent that, whether it's through consumer consent or some inherent change to the tool or any other methodology that you can make, because you don't want that. Like, that is not a thing that will help in the end of the day. So I think if we all can think about, I mean, I know it's a little bit grim and dark, but if we could think through what are the bad
I
outcomes.
mean, listen, we all have to be grown-ups about some of this stuff. And if you can't go through that exercise, you got your head in the sand, and that's not good either. So
yeah, exactly. Prevent it before it happens, and then never need to have a warrior fighting DOJ on your back.
Okay. I want to know what the warrior does, the Jess warrior does, kind of on a day-to-day basis. Like, I would think sometimes you're fully consumed with, drama. I'm sorry, but I think your life is like the TV shows I've watched. So I'm just saying, it seems like it's got to be super sexy and fun, but tell me what the day's really like, because it's probably a little bit of paperwork.
Yeah, when it's good, it's good. When it's good, it's like that. It's ripped from the headlines, really high profile, exciting case representing one of the world's top technologists. Like, that's when I'm really happy and learning from them, like what makes them tick, how did they get where they got, what did they invent, what does it do? But most of the time I'm just dealing with regulators like the FCC, FTC, like all the alphabet soup. There's so many of them. And they come with civil investigative demands or subpoenas, and they just don't really understand the client's business model or technology. So I have to sort of be the go-between, go learn more from the client about some little piece of their tech and why it does or doesn't operate in the way the government is already decided it does. And then I have to go back and explain it and try to mediate between the two. So regulatory defense is my day-to-day. The sexy, big, matters are fewer, but they are more fun. And
you're not reporting to Congress on your findings and what you're seeing in one of those like long tables,
Not yet. Maybe someday, but I am a
Yeah.
crisis junkie, honestly. Like, I do like to help people out when it's really the big, the
Oh,
high.
come on. Everybody likes a little. That's why we watch those TV shows, a
Right.
little bit of an adrenaline rush to figure stuff out and to be needed by people, as long as it's not 24/7, endless, as long as you get some breaks in there. So what do you like the most about it? I mean, I understand. Was that a Commodore computer when you were 6? Like, I remember that first ridiculous computer that was like 1 and 0. That was like basically what it was.
I double majored in undergrad in history and legal studies. I already knew I wanted to be a lawyer from early. But the history part of it, honestly, like being there, it feels like I'm a part of history. It's not just sort of something I'm observing, but I'm actively engaged in when I'm sitting next to a founder of some fantastic company, talking to them. And then usually, unfortunately, it's still men. We've got a lot more work to do, like you said. But that's where there's a headline above the fold, New York Times or Wall Street Journal, and I know what's happening behind that. That feels like I'm winning.
And when they actually do what you say, when you're like,
Yes.
advise them and they follow your
They listen to me, yes, and that's an amazing thing to work with people and coming from extreme power, from the C-suite, from the board, to be their trusted warrior is really an honor and a privilege, and I enjoy it a lot.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm in the Silicon Valley as well, and I'm in this situation where you know more than I do about some of this stuff, but got all kinds of personalities. And I can't help but think, and I don't know. My daughter was at Uber when the drama happened. They fired the founder, Travis Kalanick. So, there's some bad behavior and people that you don't necessarily admire. And I can't help but believe if we had a better diversity of who was starting companies and building companies, you would actually have a different kind of competition for talent and for culture, inside those companies and things like that. Do you have an opinion or a vision about, like, if you could wave a magic wand and move things faster, like what would you like to see? And what do you think the difference would be?
Sure. Having worked with all kinds of CEOs like Mr. Kalanick, not him, but others,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think we're all growing. And I think what happens in that cycle is that those CEOs look back at what happened. And if they had made a mistake or they should have run things differently, they learn from it. I think when you have a diversity of perspectives right at that moment, you don't end up having as much of a toxic culture where people don't feel heard, where they don't feel like they can speak up, where, that's not, I think, the most effective way to get where we all want to go. I prefer to have those lessons happen earlier on, and that can really help with, that can be helped by having a diverse team, but really most important is diversity of thought,
Yeah.
diversity of
Yeah.
opinions, people who not all group think, who are able to say no or to question authority and hopefully get to a better outcome that way. So yeah, board diversity is key for that because obviously the board is the governing entity of the company, and we should make sure that they are happy to question, to push back, to engage, and diversity of thought at that level is absolutely key.
Awesome. I mean, this, I'm sorry, but you're like speaking my tune, and my whole thing is like it upgames everybody. When you have diverse voices, you can't be lazy. You have to show up prepared to a meeting if people have different perspectives. I've been on plenty of boards before. I was just in a finance committee meeting the other day and it was like nobody's speaking up and I'm the only one asking questions about, if at a certain after over $250,000, we're not protected. Like, what is the plan here? And other people are just like, I'm like, what have you been doing on this committee? And so now other people are starting to opine and pay attention because I spoke up, but that's not comfortable to be the first person to be like, hey, are we comparing, banks, and are we doing all these things that we need to do to make sure that we're getting the best setup and the best deal?
Absolutely. Speaking truth to power, having that
Yeah,
speak up
yeah,
culture,
yeah,
that's how we are able
yeah.
to think through the worst outcomes and avoid them.
And culture is set with the first 30 people. So it is not something that it's much harder to move a big ship later on. All right. Well, I want to hear more about you personally before we're almost at time, but was there an aha moment for you and sort of in your life and in your leadership and how you show up? You've gotten to sort of the ceiling of where I see most women in your field and you've broken through the ceiling. Like you're a ceiling breaker. So
You're so kind to say so. Yeah, I think my aha moment was, as a young lawyer coming up in a still heavily male dominated profession, realizing that, I have everything I need. I don't need to emulate the senior male partner in order
I
to
love
be
that.
successful, that I have my skill set is actually just as effective, if not more effective in what I'm trying to get done. And so trusting myself and trying to vanquish that little nasty voice inside, the imposter syndrome voice, and say, no, I'm not only as good, but better. That was my sort of
Honestly, this is like everything's been interesting in this conversation, but that's the mic drop moment. And the thing that I want everybody to go back and rewind and listen to that again. This, to me, it's also an interesting generational thing, though. So I'm in my 50s. The women older than me often had to act like men and some of the worst parts of being male. And they over-indexed on it sometimes, just to survive and be let in the room. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be let in. I feel like my generation was sort of pushing against that and starting to say, like, even like I remember in the 90s, it was like, oh, could we be feminine with our clothes, or do we have to wear box suits and pencil ties, And you're younger than I am, and so it's a very interesting thing to hear you say that out loud. It's not something we just were wrestling with certain parts of that, but the way you said that, I want to say hallelujah, my God, I'm so happy to hear that because this is what if women can really like be like, no, I trust myself. I understand my worth. I'm better, in fact, in many ways and work harder. And I know what my value is. That's magnificent. No wonder why you've risen so high and you're
Well,
advising all these people. It feel like we've made it as women. Like when a woman like you feels that in their bones and is not just still wrestling with maybe it could be possibly true, it's a big deal.
it is. We still have a lot of work to do, though. I mean, it's yeah, as you've said before, that's just the tip of the ice. This first step is trust
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
then be visible, then put yourself in the
Well, this
world.
is what I want to see. And maybe it's you or maybe it's some other women who come after you, but I want to see equal numbers of women run law firms. I'm not just talking about women who are making it, to that one coveted spot that women can make in a certain firm, but in the legal world, do you believe that if we had, I have friends that have said to me, and we haven't talked about any of this, but friends that have said to me, like, they'll take over the deals that I bring in, the clients I bring in, they'll hand it over to some guy to take credit for it and run the client relationship. Like, it almost feels like we're being blocked out. And so you can't take your book of business away and start your own thing because you actually aren't allowed to really own a big book of business. What is it going to take for us to have a new day? There's so many women lawyers and they're fabulous. How can we actually see more women run law firms and in the major positions in these firms?
Well, this will shock you since I'm the tech evangelist, but I really think that this next wave of tech is going to be a great equalizer. And I cannot wait for
Okay.
the incumbent for like the legal industry is built on this centuries old status quo, very stale, billable hours, competition for who gets credit for it. All of that needs to change and it needs to change now. So I am very excited to hopefully be part of disrupting that by
Fantastic.
using these new tech tools and by hopefully speaking to the next generation of innovators. They're not in their 50s,
No, right.
they're Gen
Well,
Y.
we
So
we invested in a legal tech AI company called ClearBreeze. And if you don't know Jackie, I would love to introduce you to Jackie Schaefer. She could learn so much from you, and you guys should be using her because what they're doing is they're finding like you. All right, I'm going to do legal stuff that I don't know anything about, but anyway, this is what I understand: is you get the briefing, if you will, from the opposing counsel. They can go through and make sure the AI finds all the source information, finds the mistakes that are in it, and you can, of course, go double check it all. But it sort of shortens the cycle of figuring out what your argument's going to be and whether or not, and make sure that your own argument is foolproof. So, that's my that's like one thing I know, I got going in that world you're talking about, but it's run by a woman, of course. So
yes, exactly. And I think women, hopefully, and other diverse folks are going to be more embracing of the new technology and are able to do more with less, punch above our weight,
yeah,
and get rid of this old like charge by the hour.
yeah,
Why charge by the value?
yes.
Let's do that.
Oh my God. Okay, can I send you like my history of legal bills for things where it's like, what? I could have done this myself. I just paid you all this money for you to say, yeah, you could do this, you could do that. I can't recommend what you should do.
Right.
There you
Exactly.
go. I'm showing my stripes here. This has been super fun. I know you can't as a lawyer, but God, I wish I could see your memoirs. I wish we could get like we could do like the TV show or little snippets of the behind the scenes stuff that you've been a part of. Because I know your stamp is all over tech innovation. How fun to get to talk to you about it. You're so fierce. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm really honored to be here, and I can't wait to keep fighting the good fight on behalf of women everywhere, including this
Aw.
one.
Hello, gorgeous. Your mommy's so smart and special. She says you should run a law firm someday. All right.
I thought I
Thank
looked
you
the
for
part.
your time. I love that she made a cameo here at the end. I hope everyone gets to see the little clip of that beautiful young brilliant woman. Thank you for your time today. What a gift.
Thank you so
It's been
much.
super fun to hear about what you've been working on.